They say every town has its secrets, but Ravenshade? It was different. Darker. It felt like time had stopped here, like the past was still alive, waiting for someone to uncover it. And I was that someone, asterisk. I moved to Ravenshade on a cold autumn evening, hoping for a fresh start. A new job, a quiet life. But the moment I stepped off that bus, I felt it, the feeling of being watched. At first, I brushed it off. Just nerves, right? But then I met him. Damien Blackwood. A man who seemed to belong to another time. He was tall, elegant, dressed in black, with piercing gray eyes that looked straight through me. "You're new here," he said, his voice smooth, almost hypnotic. I nodded, caught off guard. "Yeah, just moved in today." He tilted his head slightly, as if amused. "This town doesn't get many newcomers. Especially ones like you." Before I could ask what he meant, he was gone. Disappeared. Vanished into thin air. I blinked. Had I imagined it? But no. The air was still heavy where he stood. The scent of something ancient, something forbidden, lingered in the air. That night, I told my best friend, Sophia. She grew pale the moment I said his name. "Stay away from him, Elena," she whispered. "He's dangerous." I laughed nervously. "What, is he a serial killer or something?" Sophia shook her head. "No, worse." Then, suddenly, bang. The window flew open, and the candlelight flickered wildly. And for a split second, outside in the darkness, I saw them. Two glowing red eyes. Watching me. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I did what any sane person wouldn't do. I started digging for answers. The old town library smelled of dust and forgotten stories. I flipped through ancient records, reading about the town's history. And then I found it. An article. Dated 1845. The Blackwood family, said to be cursed with eternal life, doomed to walk the night forever. I felt a shiver down my spine. And then I felt him. I turned. And there he was. Damien Blackwood. Standing behind me, his expression unreadable. His voice was softer this time. "I told you, you shouldn't be here." I stepped back, my heart pounding. What are you?" For a long moment, he just looked at me. Then, in the blink of an eye, he was gone. Vanished. Like a shadow. Like a ghost. Like something not human. And that was when I knew. I had fallen into a story far older than me. A love that was never meant to be. A curse that was never meant to be broken. And Damien Blackwood? He was the beginning of it all. I should have walked away. I should have left Ravenshade while I still could. But something about Damien Blackwood pulled me in. A mystery. A warning. A secret buried in time. And I was too stubborn to let it go, asterisk. After that night in the library, I couldn't stop thinking about him. His words haunted me. "You shouldn't be here." What did he mean? Why did his name appear in an article from 1845? Why did it feel like I had seen him before? I needed answers. And I knew exactly where to look. The Forbidden Mansion. The Blackwood estate. No one in town ever went near it. They whispered about it in hushed voices, like it was a place cursed by death itself. So of course, that's exactly where I went. The gates were old and rusted, vines curling around the iron bars like nature was trying to pull it back into the earth. I pushed them open. The air inside was different. Thicker. Heavier. I took a step forward. And suddenly, a voice. Right behind me. "You really don't listen, do you?" I gasped and turned. Damien. Standing there, arms crossed, watching me like I was the most frustrating thing in the world. His eyes weren't red this time. Just deep, endless gray. Like storm clouds before the rain. I need to know the truth, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He sighed, shaking his head. Some truths are better left buried. I stepped closer. Who are you, Damien? A long silence. Then, he whispered something that sent chills down my spine. I don't remember what it feels like to be alive. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. And then, the wind changed. Suddenly, Damien's expression darkened. He turned his head sharply, like he heard something I couldn't. Go home, Elena, he said quickly. Now. What's wrong? I asked, heart pounding. Then. I felt it too. A presence. Something, watching us. And then, from the darkness, a low, menacing voice echoed through the air. Well, well, well. Damien. Found yourself another little human, have you? The rival. Damien stiffened. Lucian, he said, his voice sharp as a blade. Lucian smirked, looking between us. Amused. Dangerous. She smells different, he said, stepping toward me. Familiar. Do you know why that is, Damien? Damien blocked his path instantly. Leave her out of this. Lucian tilted his head. Oh, but she's already in this. Isn't that right, Elena? I took a step back. How do you know my name? Lucian's smile widened. Because, darling, we've met before. The world blurred. For a second, just a second, images flashed in my mind. A ballroom. Candlelight. A man in black, twirling me in a dance. A whisper in my ear. You are mine, Elena, in every lifetime. My breath hitched. I stumbled back, my hands shaking. Damien grabbed my wrist. Go. Now. But I couldn't move. Because deep down, I knew Lucian was telling the truth. The unfinished story. I stared at my reflection, my mind racing. Who was I? Why did I feel like I had lived this before? And why did Damien and Lucian look at me like they had seen a ghost? I touched my wrist where Damien had grabbed me. His touch had been cold. Like someone who hadn't been warm in centuries. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just a mystery. Somewhere deep inside, I already knew the truth. I had lived this before. A past life. A forgotten story. And Damien Blackwood was at the center of it. But Lucian's words haunted me the most. We've met before, Elena. In every lifetime. Every lifetime. What did that even mean? And why, did a part of me believe him? The dream of the past. That night, I had a dream. But it didn't feel like a dream. It felt like a memory. I was in a ballroom. Golden chandeliers. Candlelight flickering. People twirling in elegant gowns. And then, a man took my hand. His grip was strong, familiar, possessive. He pulled me close, his lips brushing my ear. You belong to me, Elena. I gasped, staring up at him. Lucian. His piercing blue eyes locked onto mine like I was his, and his alone. I tried to pull away, but then another hand grabbed mine. Damien. But he wasn't dressed in black. He was dressed like a nobleman, his dark hair tied back, his face softer, human. His voice was urgent, desperate. Elena, you don't understand. You're in danger. Lucian laughed. She understands perfectly. Then suddenly, a scream. Flames. Blood. And then, nothing. I shot up in bed, heart pounding, sweat dripping down my face. What was that? A nightmare? Or, a memory? I touched my wrist, where both men had grabbed me in the dream. It burned. As if the past was trying to claw its way back into me. Then suddenly, a knock at the window. I turned slowly. And there he was. Damien. Watching me from the shadows. His voice was low, urgent. Get dressed. Now. They're coming for you. The hunt begins. I didn't ask questions. I just ran. The night air was cold, biting at my skin. Damien led me through the back alleys, his grip tight around my wrist. Who's coming? I asked, breathless. He didn't answer. Then, a growl. A deep, inhuman sound echoed through the darkness. Something was following us. Something, not human. Damien stopped abruptly and turned, his eyes flashing a deep, glowing red. Stay behind me. Then, a shadow leapt from the darkness. A creature. Fangs. Claws. Eyes glowing like fire. And it wasn't alone. More figures emerged from the shadows, surrounding us. Lucian's voice echoed through the night. You can't run forever, Damien. You know she belongs to me. Damien growled, stepping forward. Over my dead body. Lucian smirked. That's the idea. And then, they attacked. The battle. Everything happened too fast. Damien moved like a ghost, his body a blur of shadows. I watched as he tore through the creatures, his strength inhuman, terrifying, beautiful. Lucian just watched, amused. And then, he turned to me. He reached for me. Come now, Elena. Don't you remember what we were? And for a moment. I did. Visions. Dancing. A kiss. A promise sealed in blood. My head spun, my knees buckling. Lucian caught me, his arms gentle. You're remembering, aren't you? He whispered. I barely had time to answer, because in the next second, Damien was there, yanking me away. His voice was low, dangerous. Touch her again, and I'll kill you. Lucian only smiled. You already did. Once. Damien froze. And in that moment, I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. And then, Lucian vanished into the night. The battle was over. But my war was just beginning. The truth unfolds. We sat in silence. The fire crackled in the old cabin Damien had taken me to. I turned to him. What did Lucian mean? I whispered. Damien stared at the flames. For a long time, he said nothing. Then finally. His voice was quiet. Broken. You really don't remember, do you? I swallowed hard. Remember what? Damien's gaze met mine. And what he said changed everything. Elena, you loved me once. And I killed you for it. I sat there, frozen. His words echoed in my mind, over and over again. Elena, you loved me once. And I killed you for it. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But most of all, I wanted to know the truth. Asterisk. The forgotten past. I swallowed hard, my voice barely above a whisper. What do you mean, you killed me? Damien's jaw clenched. He ran a hand through his dark hair, his eyes burning with something between guilt and grief. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then finally, he said. Because I had no choice. His voice was hollow. Like the memory of what he'd done still haunted him. You were different back then, Elena. You weren't human. My breath hitched. What? Damien turned to me slowly, his gray eyes full of something unspoken. You were one of us. The truth of what I was. I shook my head, my heart racing. No. No, that's not possible. Damien's voice was gentle now. You were a vampire, Elena. You were born into this world, not turned. I felt dizzy. Then why am I human now? Damien's gaze darkened. Because I killed you. And Lucian brought you back. The blood pact. Lucian saved me? I whispered. Damien nodded. He made a deal, a blood pact. One that allowed your soul to be reborn as a human, wiping away your past life. But he knew, one day, you'd remember. A shiver ran down my spine. Why would he do that? Damien exhaled sharply, his hands curling into fists. Because he was in love with you, Elena. And I took you away from him. A love that ended in blood. The images flashed in my mind again, clearer this time. A fight. Damien and Lucian, standing in the ruins of an old castle, blood dripping from their hands. I was there, watching. Screaming. Torn between them. I had loved them both once. And they had destroyed me for it. Then. A blade. Pain. Darkness. And then, nothing. Until now. Lucian's claim. I don't understand, I said, shaking. If Lucian wanted me back, why hasn't he? Then I felt it. A presence. Cold. Ancient. Familiar. And then, a voice behind me. Because I was waiting for you to remember, darling. I turned sharply. Lucian. Standing at the edge of the forest, his piercing blue eyes locked onto mine. He stepped forward, slow, deliberate. I knew this day would come, he murmured, tilting his head. And now, you are mine again. I took a step back. No. No, I'm not. Lucian smirked. Oh, but you are. You always were. Damien moved between us instantly, his fangs bared. You're not taking her, Lucian. Lucian sighed, amused. You never did understand, Damien. This isn't about taking her. This is about her remembering who she really is. His gaze met mine again, and suddenly, it all rushed back. The final memory. Lucian whispered to me, centuries ago. We are bound, you and I. In life, in death, and in every lifetime that follows. Then, Damien's voice, desperate. Run, Elena. He'll never let you go. Then, a betrayal. Blood. Lucian's hands covered in it. And my own reflection, fading into darkness. The choice. Elena gasping, her eyes wide as the past and present collide. I looked at Lucian. Then at Damien. One had loved me too much. The other had killed me for it. And now. I had to choose. Which part of me did I want to be?